sit back and relax. You're listening to episode 267 of the WealthTech Today podcast. And I'm your host, Greg Iskowitz, founder of Ezra Group Consulting. And this podcast features interviews, news, and analysis on the trends and best practices all around wealth management technology. My guest for this episode was Frank Smith, CEO of Private Advisor Group. Now, Frank has been at Private Advisor Group for 4 years, and he's been CEO the past 2 years. But previous to this, he was Director of Investment Solutions at Kuna Mutual Group for 2 years. And before that, he did a long stint, 14 years at LPL Financial, where he finished up as Business Development Enterprise Relationship Manager and Business Consulting RIA Solutions. Frank and I had a great conversation. We talked about industry trends that he's seeing in the independent advisory space. And we also talked about 2 new tech platforms that Private Advisor Group has launched: Wealth Suite, which is their investment management platform, and Greenhouse, which is an advisor community platform. But before we get into those details and start the conversation, let's do just a couple of quick housekeeping tasks. Please subscribe to this show wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And please check out our sponsors, the Invest in Others Charitable Foundation, and you can find more information about them at investinothers.org. Now, let's kick this thing off. All right, here we go. I'm excited to introduce our next guest. It's Frank Smith, CEO of Private Advisor Group. Frank, welcome.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate the invite.
I'm happy I could fit into your busy schedule. You got a lot going on, my friend. Where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from our second and newest corporate office out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is home for me.
That's a beautiful place. How's the weather down there?
A little chilly today, but the sun's shining, so can't complain. Beautiful view from the office of our little downtown that reminds me of a Hallmark movie.
Oh, I'm sure. Little chill. We have different concepts of chilly. I'm in Manhattan at the moment. It was 23 degrees when I woke up this morning.
All right. You're a little chillier than that.
Just a bit. But let's jump right in. Can you please give us a 30-second elevator pitch for Private Advisor Group?
I will try to do it in 30 seconds. Private Advisor Group is an independent financial services firm. We were founded in 1997 in Morristown, New Jersey, which is our primary corporate office, by John Hyland and Pat Sullivan, 2 advisors who are still the founders, of course, and partners in our business. We are one of the nation's largest financial services firm, covering over 800 advisors across the nation. We did have the honor of Barron's ranking us number 4 on their top RIA firms. About 35 billion in assets under management, and that was as of our mid-year reporting, and over 50 employees support those 800 advisors throughout the country.
35 billion is a healthy amount, and you've had some serious growth over the past couple of years.
It is healthy. We're honored to be able to support that business, and if we were able to brag a little bit more, it doesn't include some of our assets under administration that our advisors do through brokerage business and some of the outside business that's direct to fund and that sort of thing. But yeah, we've been very fortunate to continue to be a destination for advisors. Advisors who join Private Advisor Group are predisposed to grow, predisposed to stay, and it's been an honor to be a little part of that growth over the last few years.
Speaking of predispositions to grow, I want to talk a little bit, start off by talking about trends in the independent RIA space, considering where you're sitting and where you've been in your career. You've got unique insights into what's happening. So what are some trends you are seeing in the independent RIA space?
Sure. There's several, but I'll touch on a few, and I'll some of the non-technical stuff. I like to start there as a bigger picture guy. But one of the broad trends that we continue to see, and we're excited about this, is just it continues to be a destination for independent financial advisors. And we're biased, of course, but that's something that we're excited to continue to see. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we can touch on some of those. But Advisors who are seeking independence are given a few different options or alternatives when they're exploring that. One option could be they could go have a direct relationship with one of the very large independent broker dealers or one of the very large RIAs in the space. That's certainly resource rich, but maybe not something that they get a lot of community out of. They could go form their own RIA, and we continue to see advisors doing that. I think while we continue to see consolidation, we continue to also see the number of RIAs stay pretty steady or in some cases increase. We're not necessarily, I'll talk about that as the second trend, but we're not necessarily ones who believe that forming an RIA, as easy as it could potentially be, at least initially, isn't the best thing for many advisors, or really helping them solve what they're looking to solve for. They're looking to solve for freedom and flexibility. And we believe that they can get that through partnering with a firm like Private Advisory Group as a scalable RIA that gives them that alternative to the large independent broker dealer space, or forming their own RIA, which, in this regulatory environment, we believe in some cases that's actually putting advisors in harm's way. But the good news is that continues to be a trend. We're going to continue to build on that momentum around that trend. The second thing tying into that is what I'd refer to as maybe smaller owner-operator RIAs have determined in a lot of cases that running a regulated entity isn't necessarily what they were originally seeking to do. They wanted to provide objective advice to their investors. They wanted to operate a financial practice in their community. They wanted to grow. They wanted freedom and flexibility around technology, product, and who they do business with. Unfortunately, forming your own RIA comes with all the other stuff that you may not have necessarily thought through, or really understood how much time and risk that created for the owner operator. So what we're starting to see more of is some of these smaller RIAs who can still achieve what they're looking to accomplish without having to have both the time constraint and the risk in running a regulated entity. So we're seeing quite a few of those decide to shut the RIA down, move to a firm like Private Advisory Group, fortunately to Private Advisory Group in many cases, where they can still have that freedom and flexibility, but we're giving them time back. We're helping them mitigate risk. We're the ones that are helping them with technology vendor selection and due diligence, or custodian contracts, or compliance and operations, and some of the big ticket, risky and time consuming stuff. And by doing that, we're giving them time back to focus on what they really want to do, and that's work with their clients in an independent way. And so we continue to see that as a trend, and one that we've built a lot of momentum around. And I think the third one that we should talk about is just the regulatory and the compliance environment. With the administration change expected going into 2025, we have an interesting view on the regulatory and compliance environment that we maybe have never really gotten that privilege of a peek into, and that it was a former administration that had another administration in between both of its terms, which is a really unique scenario in our business. The benefit is it does give us insight into what we can expect. And typically what we can expect in a scenario like this is, yes, a more disclosure and principles-based view of looking at things, which we are certainly fans of. Certainly continued retail enforcement, which we are supporters of, but doing that in a way that we believe is much more reasonable and maybe brings a little bit more common sense into it. I think the inverse of that is what some have said we've experienced as a profession or as an industry, where regulation is much more done through enforcement first, which we question the effectiveness of if our goal is really just to protect the end investor. So I expect we're very bullish on the environment going forward, where we believe that the investor will continue to be protected, but it will be done in a way that is very pro-business for RIAs to continue to grow and build on that momentum in those first 2 points that I mentioned, that we continue to be a destination, and we continue to see other firms outsource to us at meaningful scale.
Talking about regulations and compliance. So we've been led to believe, just based on initial reports, that there might be some cutting of regulations or reducing the complexity of regulations, which is a good thing in general, right? We all need some regulations, but we need the right regulations. As you mentioned, more reasonable and common sense regulations versus an enforcement first mentality, which we've seen the past 4 years. But would that possibly reduce the pressure on advisors who don't want to run a regulated entity? Because maybe it's not so hard with the new administration.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think that's a great point, and we've challenged ourselves internally to thinking about that too. What I would say is that we don't expect this to be the wild, wild west. And we don't want it to be the wild, wild west either. So a couple watch outs there. The first is, I don't think, no, I know that good regulation and investor protection is not going away.
Mhm.
It's not going to happen. It didn't happen before. It's not expected to happen again.
Mhm.
I think the regulation by enforcement may allow for more meaningful conversations around how do we continue to protect the end investor, especially as new things like AI and cyber, which is a continuation of threats over the past few years,
Mhm.
come online, interesting products that come online, more sophistication with investors. It's good for us to have regulation, but it's also good for us to make sure we're doing that in a way that that is pro-business. And there's a lot of really good, meaningful firms out there that don't want wild, wild west, and I'd put us into that category. So it's still, even so, you take that and you say, all right, well, still with quality regulation or good and reasonable regulation. The prior Trump SEC, just to use as an example, really focused on retail clients around Reg BI and around the marketing rule. It was very disclosure and principles based. That's still very burdensome for a firm to keep up with, to create policies and procedures around, to implement those policies and procedures, and burdensome for all the right reasons. There still is a considerable amount of risk if you don't do those well, and there should be. So I think, Craig, this idea of it's going to become so easy that everyone should do it is probably not one that we would subscribe to for all the right reasons. The second part of that we have to keep in mind is, again, having the ability to look back in time and see what the state response was to limiting regulation at the SEC. There's some states that have a significant advisor concentration that became much more aggressive as a result of the SEC becoming less aggressive. And this is in both their proposed rulemaking and their enforcement. And I think we could expect that again.
That was a good non-technical part of the podcast. But let's get on to the technical part of the WealthTech Today podcast. Let's talk tech. Can you
Okay.
give us an overview of the tech stack that Private Advisor Group is running and managing these 35 billion in AUM plus many other billions in AUA?
Yeah, so to start at the highest level, one of the benefits of being a firm that is truly focused on the independent mindset of advisors is much of the technology and much of the technology experience is advisor driven or key partner driven. And when I'm speaking to key partners, it's our embedded relationship with LPL on both the broker dealer side as well as them as a primary custodian for a lot of the advisor assets that affiliate with Private Advisor Group. We do also have a considerable amount of assets that sit at other custodians like Fidelity, Schwab, and others. And what's great about our business is that advisors have a lot of different technology that they can use depending on how they want to structure. And think about the spectrum of we'll call it the sales cycle or the day in the life of an advisor, whether it's using certain technology on the marketing side for website creation and lead generation branding. There's a lot of different technology tools that have been approved for that based on how deep the advisor wants to go in that experience, they have access to that on an approved basis. Then you get into prospecting or managing the pipeline and notes around client relationships. Well, that's when you get into CRM. There's a curated list of CRM solutions. You think about Salesforce and Redtail and some of the top brands in the business that are integrated into the advisor's technology stack. And then you get into trading platforms or financial planning platforms or portfolio construction platforms. A lot of the name brands that exist out there, then into trading platforms like LPLs and other custodians or the broker-dealer side of the business. And that's so it's for better or worse, it's an opportunity for advisors to choose their adventure, how they want to go along the spectrum of branding themselves to ultimately managing those client relationships, hopefully generationally, and all the reporting that goes into that. There's pros and cons to that, I believe, Craig. The pro is that advisors have choice, which is something that we're very committed to. The con to that is that if you have too many options, sometimes there can be an actual breakdown in the technology experience. So one of the things that we like to do with advisors and through our partnership with LPL and other firms like to do with advisors is really identify what type of experience are they looking to provide, what's the best, most integrated version of that. And then if they choose because they have a affinity towards another technology provider that's on the approved list, if that somehow breaks down the experience or breaks down the integration, as long as they have knowledge of that, that's up to them locally as an independent practitioner to decide. So what we don't have, and this is intentional at this stage, is we don't have a standardized tech stack. We have curated solutions that solve for specific experiences that advisors have or their staff has throughout the day, or ultimately that they want to deliver to the investor. And that's at the highest level. You get into certain underlying technologies that help us operate the RIA platform. Orion is a big partner for us that's embedded in our business. They're also an underlying platform provider, technology provider for our in-house investment management solution. And then Salesforce, as an example, we can talk a little bit about a newly launched program called Greenhouse, but Salesforce powers that. We're not in we do have certain development that we do or that we outsource or certain things that we do that are unique to Private Advisor Group, but we want to be best executors, best curators in a lot of these cases and not known as a technology development company. There's a lot of great fintech firms out there that can deliver on that for us.
Makes perfect sense to me. You want to know what you're good at and stick to your knitting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Greenhouse, but let's talk about, so you have two white label platforms. One's called Greenhouse and one's called Wealth Suite. Let's start with Wealth Suite. So that's built on the Orion platform, white labeled. So talk to me about that platform first.
Yeah, so the introduction of Wealth Suite to our solution stack came a couple years ago as more and more advisors were diversifying custodian relationships or coming on board with a custodian relationship where maybe didn't have an embedded solution or one that they were used to. There was also a lot of advisors and continue to be a lot of advisors, and we fully support this and will, that operate as portfolio manager that haven't necessarily dived into any sort of models-based management or outsourcing centrally managed products or platforms, whether it was cost prohibitive or they lost control or perceived control in that, or they just thought their clients viewed them as portfolio manager and that was the value that they provided. A lot of different reasons for that, but one of the things that became very clear to us was we're at the scale and experience level where we need to have a Private Advisor Group specific product. Doesn't mean that it's the only way or we're not supportive of the other products. We certainly are. It's part of being an independent practice. But we introduced Wealth Suite at that point. And the purpose of Wealth Suite was what we think at the time and still is filling in a little bit of a gap or a bridge between advisors who have historically operated as portfolio managers compared to those who maybe view model management as either too large of a marketplace to decide what they want to get into or too expensive of a marketplace for them to release that control. And WealthSuite, we believe, sits squarely in the middle of that. Competitively priced, it's available on multiple custodian platforms, so it's not unique to your custodian relationship, and it is digitally based. We kept it simple on purpose. It'll continue to evolve and become more complex over time as advisor needs dictate that. But for now, it's a mutual fund. We have a number of strategists on the platform, many of the name brands. It's a mutual fund platform, ETF platform. We do have a mutual fund ETF blend portfolio. And then we interestingly added, and this is through our relationship with Orion as the underlying tech provider, custom indexing and tax solutions, which is a really interesting thing that not hasn't quite caught on yet, but we believe is something that more and more, especially investors with tremendous amounts of unrealized gains and these longly held positions could benefit from, where advisors don't have to be rocket scientists to, or actually investors on the other side of that don't have to be inherently wealthy for them to benefit from and to effectively deliver on tax managed solutions. So WealthSuite fit nicely inside of that, and something that we want to continue to make available to advisors that are part of our ecosystem. We've seen some pretty good momentum and traction recently, and a lot of it's been from advisors who are looking to not go all in yet, but really dip their toe into models management in a way that is bespoke, is very curated, and very competitively priced as the home team product.
That's awesome. Can you give me a quick rundown of some of the reasons why you chose Orion? And I know Orion is your core platform. You
Yeah.
guys switched them, I think, 5 years ago, converted to them for your core portfolio management, and now you're using the TAMP for WealthSuite is more of a TAMP offering. Can you just talk
That's
about
right.
the partnership with Orion and how that came about and how that's going?
Yeah, and you know this more than I, that in the world of fintech, if we're still calling it fintech, there are more options available to. And by the time we end this conversation, there's going to be more options available to us to choose from. And it can be incredibly overwhelming, not just for advisors, but also for RIA operators, to have a specific technology that you have to focus on integration, you have to focus on due diligence. Are they changing the name tomorrow? Are they being bought tomorrow? Will the update integrate with our core operating platform? And it became obvious to us a few years ago as we were making the decision around ultimately what platform this would reside on, that if we could find a technology vendor that is so embedded or core to how we operate the business that can incrementally turn on some of these other offers for us, to us, and whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision for us or for everybody, I'll leave others to decide. But for us, the right decision was, can we go deeper with one provider, just given the level of integration they have in other areas of our business, versus bolting on a considerable amount of other providers. And yes, so Orion is a good relationship with them as human beings. They're great at development. They're great at staying ahead of the curve. Their platforms work. They're priced competitively. All the things that check the box for sure. There's other great providers out there, but to the extent that we can focus on specific elements of this, maybe as a core, where Orion focus on it as an also, it just makes more sense for us to go deeper with one than it did for us to try to bolt on a lot of additional interesting technologies. So it was a practical decision, Craig, as much as it was a functional decision.
That's how I find most decisions go. It's never just one aspect of it. It's multi-dimensional whenever you're making these types of decisions, especially when it's which tech providers to work with. And we're seeing more of our clients build out similar white label platforms. So let's move on to the second platform you guys have just recently launched. So WealthSuite is already 2 years old.
Right.
And this year you launched Greenhouse, which is a virtual community built on Salesforce Experience Cloud. Talk about what was driving that and how that's going over with your advisor community.
Sure. Yeah, we're really proud of this one. It's been a lot of fun to go from concept to delivery on something that this one does fall into the homegrown category. A lot of development on our end in partnership with the core platform and others. But uh, as we grow as a firm, a few things. So as we grow as a firm, our 800 or so advisors that we partner with and their staff and even our staff become very dispersed throughout the nation. And that's a really good thing. We're very happy with that. But one of the things that we really is a basis of or a principle of how we operate the firm is this concept of community. To us, the advisor community, the sponsor community, the relationship we have with each other really is one of the more intangible value components of why advisors would say they partner with Private Advisor Group and why we enjoy coming to work every day. But that becomes more challenging to do, whether it's through multiple technology systems or in person, when you have this great disbursement of people in different geographies and different ways of doing business. So and it was just, quite frankly, time for us to upgrade some internal systems around how we capture certain compliance functions or how we communicate with advisors. And then you have advisors, going back to the technology comment, who just by nature of the way that they've chosen their tech stack or chosen their experience, have a lot of different places that they and their staff have to log into every day and go in order to complete one body of work. Mm-hmm. And so we created this concept of a greenhouse, and we could talk probably for another 30 minutes around why we came up with the name. It was very intentional and actually a fun exercise to go through. But we wanted to make sure that we created an environment where there was some element of single sign-on for advisors who were leveraging multiple technology platforms or trading platforms. So that was delivered through Greenhouse. It's a one login gets you to all the different logins and how you operate your business. Single sign-on is not new, but it was new to Private Advisor Group. Another one is just staying informed. We want to make sure that the way we communicate with advisors is effective. And we can do that a lot of different ways, but if you can lead advisors to a one-stop where there's other required functions in order to operate the business that they do, and we're creating value within inside of that they want to go to Greenhouse, this is a great way for us to make sure that they're staying informed. And it could be anything from some of the compliance obligations that they have or CE obligations to staying informed on sponsor events or content that we're making available to them, wherever. So that was a big one for us. Staying compliant is a big one. So there's a lot of technology functions that we've embedded in here where certain branch reporting or records that advisors have to maintain on communications, on trading, on Form CRS, things that they have to stay on top of and indicate to us so we can do our supervisory obligation and oversight obligations embedded in the platform. But a big one is staying connected. I mentioned the community aspect. We created a community page or part of Greenhouse, not thinking of the right term, where we want to drive advisors into communicating with each other. So, Craig, think about this as like a Reddit, but inside a Private Advisor Group, where advisors or staff can go into certain groups and throw out questions around, maybe it's a technology question. What technology are you using, or do you have an experience around this technology, pros and cons? Certain client scenarios that they're coming across, they want to ask their peer group if they've come across the same and how have they solved for certain things. Even some of the lifestyle communications that advisors want to talk about, who truly enjoy each other's company, but maybe only see each other a couple of times a year at conferences because they're many states away, but want to stay connected through some of the lifestyle connection stuff around pets or kids or vacations or whatever's important to them. Simple stuff that you converge all of those things into one operating platform or one point of entry. And we're seeing a massive benefit from that, and we'll continue to add to that. A couple of the other things that we're going to be including in that, and actually this was just included, is what I'll refer to probably incorrectly as a marketplace, buy-sell marketplace for advisors who are interested in buying a practice or are interested in finding a successor for their practice through a relationship that we have with FinLink. embedding that into our system as well, where we can create a marketplace for keeping assets in our community. And so you take all of those and you put that into one platform, and we call that Greenhouse. And it's something that we're going to continue to build on, and it's built in a way that it can evolve and will evolve.
That sounds awesome. Uh, I was speaking with your brilliant CTO, Patrick Sullivan, who
Mhm.
said one of the reasons for greenhouses, besides that you just mentioned, was really it's thanking advisors for coming on the journey with you.
Yeah.
Right. And that really resonated that there's lots of firms doing what you guys are doing. There's lots of RIA aggregators, as you mentioned, broker dealers, other, acquisitive RIAs. So there's lots of options, but being able to talk to advisors and say, this is the journey that we're on. Do you want to come on this journey with us? Resonates, I think, with your core constituency.
It does. One of the phrases that we use quite a bit around here is taking insights and putting them into action, or any variation of that statement. We are surrounded by, I won't necessarily throw myself into this equation, but we are surrounded by very intelligent people who have a great deal of external and internal view as to what's important to advisors, what's important to this profession, what's important ultimately to the end investor. And we could certainly come up with those concepts or ideas and deliver on them on our own. We much prefer to understand what are advisors needing and wanting, and how do we take those insights, and to the extent we can take action on them. And Greenhouse is an incredible example of that. It is, especially the community component of it. It is formed as a result of our advisor council giving us input, our advisor surveys that we do, insight surveys on an annual basis, and just interactions we have with people across the country and at conferences. So, that Wealth Suite, other things that we do, just even how we show up, is purely driven by what advisor insights we've been given, and what extent we can take action on that. But yeah, I love the way I assume that, yeah, coming from Patrick, I love the way he phrased that.
Oh, yeah, me too. Now, Wealth Suite is a terrific example of how an RIA can leverage third-party software and services to provide a white-labeled product offering to their advisors. Here at Ezra Group, we're seeing more and more RIAs and broker-dealers launching their own in-house tech platforms that are built using some of the most popular software on the market. But it's not easy. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of industry knowledge, and a lot of hands-on execution to deliver on such a goal. So if you're leading a fast-growing RIA and need advice on how to launch an internal TAMP or technology platform, you should run, not walk, to our website, ezragroup.com, and hit the golden Contact Us button on the homepage. Our team of experts is ready to help you with any and all of your needs around software, operations, workflows, or business strategy. Take your firm to the next level by working with ezragroup.com today. How in the very competitive environment that you are in, how much of a differentiator do you see these platforms being for you?
So it depends on how far we want to expand our peer group. I think there's a lot of models that exist, like private advisor group at different scales, ranging from relatively bare bone owner-operator driven models to some that are much more technology advanced and integrated. I say that saying that we're not trying to be anyone but private advisor group. Certainly we're trying to learn from them. We're not trying to be anybody but private advisor group. I think it's any one of these things stand alone, maybe viewed as not all that novel, or maybe a table stake. These all combined, when you think about our community, our people, culture, mission, vision, values, you get to experience private advisor group. There's just something very intangible about what makes this place very special. And we have Pat and John to thank for really building on their initial vision from 1997. And we're honored to be stewards of that. But certainly you look at Wealth Suite, you look at Greenhouses, continuing to round out our portfolio of what should be expected of a firm our size. So even if you don't put them in novel category or leading category, which again, we're biased and we think both of them are, It's just a testament to, in order to compete in this space, in order to compete not just in straight line math or some of the successes that you view around assets or advisor count, but to truly deliver on the experience we want to deliver on, you have to be implementing these things. As your client, who are our clients, our advisors, continue to evolve based on their clients' needs evolving, these are just things that we viewed as must-haves. And so I think just a long-winded way of directly answering your question, Craig, of we view these as table stakes, but it doesn't mean a lot of firms are delivering on these table stakes. We're just really fortunate to be able to do so. And we'll continue to improve on them and, like I said, build momentum around them.
And in the fight for advisor recruiting, the table stakes keep growing.
Yep, that's right.
Right? What was table stakes 5 years ago is now not,
Very different.
very different than what the advisors are expecting now if they are leaving a wirehouse or or an IBD and looking to go off on their own.
Yeah, and this is not being critical of any one firm. It's just there's so many RIAs in this marketplace. There's so many firms in this marketplace. There are still firms that are operating 5 or 10 years ago, and I think they understand that, and that's one of the reasons why we see some of these, going back to the beginning, why we see some of these firms decide to not be in the RIA business anymore, because they're faced with this decision of either pour a tremendous amount of resources, time, talent, money into the business in order to keep up, or they become a dinosaur. And we don't like to see that, but that is just the nature of being competitive in this space. And we're in a fortunate position to try to stay on pace or ahead of that. And to the extent we're able to help others do that as well, we think is great work, and one we're continuing open to doing.
Frank, the time is just flying by. I've got
Yes.
for one more question. Can you
Okay.
I know you're not a fintech provider, but you've got some platforms now that you are now supporting for your community. What are some of the product roadmap items that the private advisor group community can expect from Wealth Suite and or Greenhouse next year?
Yeah, I think for Wealth Suite, we continue to look at strategist selection, and that's just given the relative newness of the platform. We want to make sure that all custodians that are available to be on that platform, simple things like account opening and reporting and trading activity like that is functioning as desired. And with launching a new platform that's technology dependent, that is an evolution, as well as making sure that strategists are meeting advisor needs. And so the not so interesting answer to that, Craig, is we just want to get the easy stuff right, and that sits inside of the Wealth Suite platform. And quite frankly, our technology strategy in general is, let's just make sure we get the easy stuff right before we go on to the next shiny thing. Fortunately, we're at a point in that process with Wealth Suite and others where we can continue to look at strategists and incrementally add those to the platform, or continue to improve the way that we do business with underlying custodian relationships. So expect that in 25 and beyond. And by the way, I just had the pleasure of having breakfast with one of our strategist partners last week, who they get excited about this too, and come to us with ideas on how we can continue to leverage them more and continue to build on the platform. So it's not just advisor feedback we're getting; it's as our strategists continue to innovate, we benefit from that innovation as well. As Orion continues to innovate, we benefit from that innovation as well. So it's get the easy stuff right and then incrementally innovate on that platform. With Greenhouse, and I would throw Greenhouse into our technology strategy in general. Again, it's getting the easy stuff right. Nothing in this business is easy, but it's trying to get the easy stuff right. We view technology a number of different ways. It's not just the advisor technology or advisor-facing interfaces. It's also how we run a good operation internally. And we tell advisors it's one of those things that if we were not running well internally, and there are certainly areas that we continue to need to improve on, advisors feel that. When we invest in underlying technology, and you mentioned your conversation with Patrick, who's doing this, We invest in our top line technology to make our employees more efficient, to make our operation more efficient, how we interact with custodian relationships more efficient. And advisors don't feel pain as a result of that. We're not necessarily getting credit for that, which is okay, but we're not also inflicting pain, which I know they're appreciative of. So we're just going to continue to focus on some of the not so flashy stuff that you're not going to see press releases on for 2025. And that sits inside of risk management, that sits inside of reporting, governance, all of those things. Greenhouse specifically, you'll continue to see some improvements on that. And I think when we think about the future enhancements and features, we want to make sure that we're driving adoption, enrollment and adoption in the ones that currently were launched this quarter, which is the community feature, as well as the FinLink, the practice marketplace. I see those as really momentum builders into 2025. I think we're going to learn a lot from both of those functions that allow us to then innovate and evolve the platform and introduce whatever the next thing is. So I know it's a little bit of a fuzzy non-answer, but we're not ashamed of saying we want to get it right. We want to dial in the experience and learn from that. And that goes back to the advisor insight into action.
Frank, you've said it all. Where can our audience find more information about Private Advisor Group?
The website is easy. It's privateadvisorgroup.com. And there's a link there where advisors or anyone's able to reach out to us, and we will get the right person in contact with them. Engage with us on social media too. We're very active on social media.
That's LinkedIn and Twitter/X?
Yes. I think we do some Facebook stuff on there as well. But yeah.
Frank, thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Hey, it's Craig again. Here are my top 3 takeaways from this episode. Number 1, industry trends in the independent RIA space. According to Frank Smith, independence remains an appealing destination for advisors. They've got lots of options, large broker-dealers, RIAs, starting their own RIA, or partnering with a scalable RIA platform like Private Advisor Group. So they are catering to the smaller owner-operated RIAs that are outsourcing. They're looking to outsource regulatory and operational burdens to a larger firm. And it's doing very well for Private Advisor Group. They recently hit $35 billion in assets. So it's working out for them. Then we went into number 2 and 3, went into their new technology platforms. First was Wealth Suite, which they actually launched 2 years ago, but we covered it a bit, which bridges the gap between portfolio management and full outsourcing. It is built on top of the Orion platform, and as well as their TAMP services. It offers mutual funds, ETFs, blended portfolios, custom indexing, and it is competitively priced and multi-custodial. And the new platform they just launched a month ago is called Greenhouse, which is a virtual advisor community built on top of Salesforce Experience Cloud. It has a single sign-on, which we love, very convenient for advisors not having to bounce around their tech stack and re-log in over again. It centralizes communications and compliance functions for advisors. It's like a Reddit community for peer engagement for Private Advisor Group advisors, and they believe it can become a marketplace for practice transitions, which is definitely a good thing. And that's it. You've reached the end of another episode of the WealthTech Today podcast. Thanks for listening. But before you go, please head over to our website, ezragroup.com, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, information, and updates. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for listening. Talk to you all again next time.